A SWAT officer is accountable for every round he fires. In Ready or Not, that's the case as well. Aiming your weapon is extremely important, so you can make those difficult shots without injuring bystanders. Ready or Not has many different optical attachments that let you aim your weapon, and today, I'll be ranking them from F tier to S tier. So, let's get started. We'll start off with the oldest way to aim a rifle, the iron sights. These days, it may seem like everybody has an optic on their firearm, but it's important to note that it wasn't that long ago that a large majority of law enforcement had rifles with iron sights, and I would bet a good majority of police agencies worldwide still issue handguns with iron sights. Iron sights consist of a front and rear sight. A user simply needs to line up the front and rear sight and place the front sight on the target. Despite seeming out of date, there are a few advantages to them. Firstly, they don't have any electronics, so you don't have to worry about batteries or electronic failure. Secondly, iron sights are typically the lowest and closest to the gun barrel. Optical sights like red dots are usually mounted a certain amount of height above the barrel. This means that when firing a gun with a red dot close to a target, your shots will hit below the dot. This phenomenon is known as height over bore. Since iron sights are closer to the barrel, the point of aim with iron sights is much closer to the actual point of impact. In a game like Ready or Not, where the majority of engagements are in close quarters, it may be preferable to use iron sights that are 0 to close quarter distances. Additionally, with a few guns specifically, you can use a red dot in conjunction with iron sights, meaning you can use the red dot for further engagements and the iron sights for closer ones. And thirdly, there are a lot of dark areas in Ready or Not that necessitate the use of a flashlight. When using a red dot in conjunction with a flashlight, the dot can be difficult or almost impossible to see with the light on. Iron sights do not have this problem. With a light on, you'll still be able to use your iron sights without issue. So even though they may seem obsolete, don't dismiss iron sights. They're more useful than you might think. With some guns, particularly the MP5, I actually prefer using the iron sights over any kind of optic. Because of their enduring usefulness, iron sights go into S tier. Next are the red dots. The majority of police agencies that have the budget will issue red dots on their patrol rifles. Red dots work by having a coated mirror inside that reflects red light. An LED shines red light onto this mirror, which creates the dot you see. A red dot has several key advantages. Putting a red dot on target is much faster than having to line up a front and rear sight. They're also quite forgiving to use. Even if your face isn't perfectly behind a red dot, you'll still be able to see the dot. And of course, using a red dot means you'll usually obscure less of your target versus iron sights. It's no surprise then that red dots are very popular with law enforcement, and in Ready or Not, more than half the optics available are red dots. We'll start with the oldest red dot in the game, the Trijicon SRS. Trijicon is an American company that has made optics for a very long time. Generally, their optics are known for their uncompromising reliability and durability. In fact, there are stories of their optics stopping bullets and saving the person using the optic. Chances are, if you've ever served in law enforcement or military, you've at minimum seen a Trijicon optic. The Trijicon SRS, or sealed reflex sight, is one of their older red dots. Its form factor definitely reflects its age. Today, it's usually taught that you should shoot with both eyes open when shooting a firearm with a red dot. There are two advantages to this. Firstly, and most importantly, is that you maintain more of your peripheral vision by keeping both eyes open. Secondly, it means that the shooter won't see too much of the optic housing, meaning that the size of the optic window doesn't matter as much when trying to see a target. In fact, some competition shooters intentionally cover their red dots with tape, so they know they're shooting with both eyes open properly. Because with both eyes open, they wouldn't see the tape at all. However, the Trijicon SRS has a huge optic window, seemingly to let a user see into the window and at the target. In the past, many shooters aimed with only their dominant eye open. This meant that the optic housing would stay in view. With this type of aiming, a larger optic window is needed to have a better view of the target. The SRS has a huge window, perhaps the largest of any red dot to exist. But with shooting both eyes open, a large window isn't needed. This makes the SRS very large and bulky compared to modern red dots. Even at the time of its release in 2012, there were other optics that did everything the SRS did, and more, at a lower price. One other thing about the SRS is that the glass is tinted very blue. Older red dots did this to contrast the red dot and make it appear brighter, the downside being that the glass itself is harder to look through. Funny enough, Ready or Not does not replicate the very tinted blue glass, and since the game renders the optic housing in full, a larger optic window does make it easier to see the target. Because of this, the SRS is actually one of my favorite optics to use in-game. This is one of the few pieces of gear where I like the in-game version much more than the real thing. So, the SRS goes into A tier. The next red dot is the Aimpoint T2. Aimpoint is a Swedish optics company that is very popular among militaries and law enforcement worldwide. Aimpoint is actually credited with being the first ones to create a true electronic red dot sight. The T2 is a small compact red dot that is reliable and boasts a very long battery life. It has a very small window, but as discussed, if you're shooting properly with both eyes open, that shouldn't matter. And clearly, it works. Numerous military units, law enforcement agencies, and competition shooters around the world use the Aimpoint T2. But as stated, Ready or Not renders the optic housing in full. This means that the T2 is one of the optics that can become very cluttered in-game. When using this optic, it can be difficult to see what you're shooting at through the window. It's usable, but not as easy as some of the other optics. So the Aimpoint T2 goes into B tier. Next is the Aimpoint Comp 5. This is another durable optic from Aimpoint, and is very similar in form factor to the T2. Practically speaking, the main difference between the Comp 5 and the T2 are a different battery, though the Comp 5 feels larger to look through. However, the battery compartment on the Comp 5 can obscure your vision. Still, it's a pretty good optic, and I haven't had much issue with using it. So, the Comp 5 also goes into B tier. So far, the red dots we've discussed have been made to fit on larger weapons, rifles or submachine guns. For a long time, red dots on pistols were seen as unnecessary for duty use. And to be honest, this was an idea I subscribed to as well. There were many justifications for this. The one I always heard was that red dots on pistols made them too bulky to be effectively used as a holster weapon. And for a long time, red dots on pistols were seen as an unnecessary luxury, limited to competition shooting or some hunting. But as red dots became more prevalent, people began to wonder why the advantages of a red dot couldn't also apply to handgun shooting. This makes even more sense when your primary weapon is a handgun, like most police officers. Well, in recent years, there's been an explosion of red dot optics specifically designed for pistols. Part of why has to do with how optics are mounted to pistols. In the past, pistols had to use specific drill and tap mounts to accommodate a red dot that made them bulky and incompatible with most holsters. But in recent years, there has been a surge of shops that mill pistol slides to accommodate a red dot. There are also pistols that come ready to mount a red dot from the factory using adapter plates. Mounting a red dot like this keeps the form factor of the pistol, so they're still usable in most holsters. It also helps keep the weight down, which is very nice if you have to carry the pistol around all day. Using a red dot on a pistol is easier than using iron sights, though if you've been shooting with irons for a while, it'll take some time getting used to. But for a law enforcement agency with officers of all shapes, sizes, and ages, a red dot can make it easier for even the greenest of recruits, or older officers with aging eyes to hit the target. When it comes to pistol-mounted optics, the most popular one by far is the Trigon Ruggedized Miniature Reflex Sight, or RMR. This is a small red dot purpose-built for handguns. It's rugged, reliable, and as a result, extremely popular. If I had to guess, I'd say the RMR is the most popular pistol red dot to date. As we've discussed before, the size of the optic window doesn't matter too much if you're shooting with both eyes open, but in Ready or Not, the optic housing is fully in view, and as a result, it can be hard to view the target. However, using the RMR is still a lot easier than using pistol iron sights, and when using a pistol against suspects with rifles, you need every advantage you can get, and this optic is certainly a big advantage. So, The Trichicon RMR goes into B tier. The RMR is a great optic, but it has its shortcomings. Changing the battery requires that you remove the entire optic from the gun, and some find the small window of the RMR difficult to use, even when shooting correctly with both eyes open and focused on the target rather than the dot. Enter the Trichicon SRO, an optic intended for pistols that allows you to change the battery out without removing the optic and has a much larger window than the RMR. It's become a very popular pistol optic, though Trichicon has stated this optic is not as robust as the RMR, and is therefore not intended for duty use. But that hasn't stopped people from using the SRO as their concealed carry optic, and it's even seen use in law enforcement, though again, Trichicon does not recommend this. In Ready or Not, the SRO is one of the best optics in the game. Like all other red dots, the optic housing is rendered in full, but in the SRO's case, the housing itself is very thin. This makes target acquisition very easy with this optic. Because of this, the SRO is one of my favorite optics in the game. I sometimes even use it on rifles over other optics. So unsurprisingly, the Trichicon SRO goes into S tier. Moving from the smallest optics in the game to the largest, we have the Nightforce ATACR Low Variable Power Optic, or LPVO. LPVOs are another relatively modern creation. Red dots are undeniable in their ability to aim and shoot quickly at close targets, but the one thing they all lack is magnification. Depending on what you use your firearm for, it may be necessary to shoot things at longer distances. An LPVO is essentially a traditional rifle scope, but is unique in that it has a one-time setting. In theory, this lets you shoot close targets like a red dot, while also having some magnification. This all sounds very nice on paper, but there are some problems. Most rifle scopes, including LPVOs, need to be mounted at a specific distance from your eye. Otherwise, there will be a black shadow that obscures the scope. This means that your head needs to be at the same distance from your scope every time you aim the weapon. Otherwise, the target will be obscured. A red dot will always be superior to an LPVO at close range. The benefit of an LPVO isn't that it's great at both close and long range shooting, but that it can combine both into one optic. But in Ready or Not, the LPVO doesn't actually work. It's permanently stuck on 12 times magnification. Given that the majority of engagements in Ready or Not are close, this makes the LPVO very difficult to use in close quarters. And there aren't enough longer engagements that necessitate a 12 times magnification. So, the Nightforce ATACR goes into F tier. If it worked, it would probably be much higher, but it doesn't. The next optic is the Elcan Spectre. This optic is what's known as a prism sight. These sights use a reflective prism to create an image, and the reticle is etched into the glass itself. This means you can have a magnified optic that's much smaller than a traditional scope. This also means that prism optics are incredibly robust, typically much more than a traditional rifle scope. The Elcan Spectre specifically is an optic that is extremely durable. It was developed by the Canadian optics company Elcan for the United States Naval Surface Warfare Center. The intention was to have an optic that could have the one-time shooting capability of a red dot, but also have magnification to make longer shots. If this sounds very similar to an LPVO, you'd be correct. But the Elcan Spectre completed development in 2006, well before any LPVO existed. The Elcan Spectre can switch between 1 times to 4 times with a simple lever. Unlike an LPVO, there's no incremental increase or decrease in magnification. It's either 1 times or 4 times. Many different militaries have adopted the optic, and it's definitely proven. Its most famous attribute is how tough it is, even when comparing it to some of the other optics militaries use. The Scar Heavy is a weapon known to be incredibly harsh on optics. There are rumors that the Scar Heavy has even destroyed some EOTechs. As a result, the Elcan Spectre is one of the optics most commonly seen on the Scar Heavy, as it's one of the few optics that can take the abuse from the Scar. In Ready or Not, the Elcan Spectre is unfortunately stuck on the 4 times magnification. Though not as bad as the 12 times magnification on the LPVO, it's still quite difficult to use in close quarters. The Elcan Spectre does have a set of iron sights you can use, but they just aren't very good. It's a shame, It's a great looking optic, and a 4x magnification would actually be useful on some maps. But because you can't switch to 1x, its usefulness is significantly diminished. Because of these reasons, the Elcan Spectre goes into C tier. Aiming through an optical sight is the proper way to shoot firearms most of the time, but it isn't the only way to aim a gun. Lasers on firearms are an alternate way to put rounds on target. The idea being that all you need to do is zero your laser to the bullet impact. In theory, it's also faster since you can simply put the laser on target without having to look down a sight. In reality, using a laser as an aiming device has multiple issues. Unlike a laser, bullets do not travel in a straight line, so the bullet is unlikely to match where the laser is pointing. In bright daylight, it can also be hard to see the laser at all, meaning it would be impossible to aim with a laser in these conditions. And most importantly, having a bright laser on your gun means that you'll reveal your position to anyone who sees it. Generally speaking, visible lasers on firearms have little to no practical use. In Ready or Not, this is the case as well, if not more so. For some reason, you can only have one handguard attachment, so by running a laser, you lose out on having a flashlight, which is infinitely more useful. However, there's one use case in game where lasers aren't completely useless. If you use a shield, you'll only be able to use a handgun, and you won't be able to aim down sights with it. In this case, a laser is the only way you'll be able to aim a pistol. It can be fun sometimes to use a visible laser, but I don't think they're worth using over a flashlight. So visible lasers go into C tier. Infrared lasers, or IR lasers, are a different story. When using night vision, it can be difficult, if not impossible, to aim with certain optics. An infrared laser is invisible to the naked eye, but visible under night vision. And because you don't need to bring a sight up to your face, an IR laser won't get in the way of night vision tubes. And since they're also used in darkness, there will never be an issue of the laser being washed out. They'll always be visible during the night. This also eliminates the biggest downside to conventional lasers. Since IR lasers are invisible to the naked eye, only people wearing night vision will be able to see the laser. In Ready or Not, there aren't any suspects that use night vision, so you can leave the laser on the whole time. Because they make it much easier to shoot with night vision, IR lasers go into A tier. Last, but certainly not least, is the EOTech EXPS3. It may look like a red dot, but it isn't one. These sights use a laser diode, mirrors, and reflectors to project a holographic reticle. Because of how they work, EOTechs don't actually require the front glass pane to function. This means that holographic sights are incredibly robust, and can function even after sustaining significant damage. It's no wonder then that EOTechs are used worldwide by many different professionals. In Ready or Not, the EOTech is probably my most used optic. The reticle is comprised of a small red dot and larger circle. It's very useful for close distances. Rather than having to put a small dot on target, all that's needed is to put the larger circle on the target for shot impacts. At closer distances, precise shots aren't generally needed, so using the larger circle as an aiming point is sufficient. The EOTech is also one of the few optics that is clear and visible under night vision. Some optics aren't very clear to look at under night vision, and others are obscured entirely, but the EOTech is very clear under night vision. In fact, it's viable in-game to forego a laser entirely, and simply rely on aiming through the EOTech. It's an optic that's both very clear during the day and under night vision, and it has a reticle that's both useful for close-up distances and further shots. The EOTech is my go-to optic in Ready or Not, and it easily earns its spot in S tier. So, that's all the optics in Ready or Not. There are some bad options, but most of them are pretty good. So pick whichever one you like, and go get good with it.